We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to your live boxing ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to your live.
Quick. So it wasn't none of that. Y'all ain't worth this. You only made $100,000. You only made this. Turkey didn't move like that. Only Eddie moved like that. Only Boots moved like that. Well, if you made $100,000, what would you be doing? Again, Boots wasn't making nowhere near what my son is making right now at 24 years old. Nowhere near. He ain't made it now. Right now, what's going to happen? He ain't made that right now. So at 24 years old.
Talk to him, Brian.
Come on, bro. We gonna win, man. We gonna win. I keep telling y'all, we gonna win. We gonna win the battle. You know what I'm saying? When they thought, I mean, you got to think about how big that's David work versus Goliath. You got to think about how small we came from to get up where we are right now in just 1 year. You can't hate on that. You can't deny that.
Brian Norman with a bold claim. Brian Norman Sr., that is. Brian Norman Sr. is saying that his son stands to make more money in the Devin Haney fight that was recently announced. I made videos about it. Than Boots has made in his entire career to this point. Wow. A brand new interview with Mill City Boxing. I will put a link in the description. You guys check that out. But in this, Brian Norman and Zab Judah as another panelist, they were speaking on the upcoming Brian Norman Devin Haney fight with Senior. And you guys heard the clip at the beginning. He's saying that, my son, you got to respect the come up. You got to respect how we grinded to get here. And, you know, people try to hold us back. He was also speaking on, like, basically Eddie Hearn. He said, like, Eddie Hearn be playing games and Boots Ennis be playing games. What they try to do, and I guess what they're famous for, is basically using the media as some kind of ploy or like a plot to gain favor. And I've been telling you guys this on the channel. Now, I'm a big fan of Jaron Boots Ennis as a whole, but it's hard to deny that particular claim. It's hard to deny that claim because if you think about it, that's exactly the MO from Eddie Hearn and exactly the MO from Jaron Ennis, right? Where they make it a public issue before anything else. And I've told you, I'm very, very hesitant to believe and very skeptical when people do that. Because if you're making something a public issue, there has to be kind of some reason for it. Like, for example, just put your thinking caps on. If you were down to fight somebody and trying to get this fight done, it was a meaningful fight, it was meaningful to you, and you want it to be as smooth as possible, right? Like, it's no different than a boxer throwing a punch at the weigh-in or at the press conference, and then the fight get canceled or they get fined, or you do anything that could potentially disrupt the fight. Why would you do that if you have a signed contract and you just have to wait till Saturday to get your hands, to get your paws on somebody and put hands to them? So you're not going to jeopardize that, right? It would be very stupid to jeopardize that. And the same thing with negotiations. Why would you be doing public negotiations if you truly felt that you wanted to make a fight? But this is what Eddie Hearn primarily has been doing, right? Where he'll put it out there for the public and want the public. It's like, it's the blame game. Oldest trick in the book, blame game. And this to me was apparent when like here's another thing. Jaron Boots Ennis and Brian Norman, their names have been synonymous for a bit now. So there is a different point where a lot of people felt Brian Norman could have, should have, would have taken the Jaron Boots Ennis deal. I'm not even talking about that initial interaction. That's old as far as I'm concerned. That's old. I'm talking about more recently. If you look at how it's played out for Jaron Ennis, the moves are rather questionable, and I'm gonna explain why. So there was a more recent, this is after the 1.7 million and that fallout. That's its own subject. That's the older subject. That's why I'm not spending too much time talking about it. I'm talking about the more recent occurrence, right? You had basically Team Boots, Eddie Hearn, and they were doing interviews and stuff and asking the public questions like, who is Brian Norman? We don't want to talk about him. This is what Boots' team was saying. They were like, he don't really want to fight us, blah, blah, blah. There was a bunch of interviews out of Boots' gym, and they were talking about how Brian Norman got whooped in sparring. I mean, sparring is sparring. He might have got whooped. I don't know. I wasn't there. But sparring is sparring. You know, that's why we have the fights, because you give someone a full, like my thing, I don't put too much credence into sparring because I come from boxing. I know, I've been in this sport. You don't know what the conditions were, right? Meaning one fighter could have been in fight camp because he actually has a fight signed, but then the other person was just in the neighborhood and in or around the weight class, but they weren't in no type of fight shape. They weren't in no type of camp. And then they spar because they got their gear, because this is what they do. You know what I mean? So going overboard about what happened in sparring is, to me, is irrelevant. When you give two fighters equal amount of time to train and get ready for an event, they know I'm fighting this style, may the best man win. That's what counts under bright lights. But anyway, Team Ennis and Eddie Hearn, they were famous for kind of like making it a public issue, especially Eddie Hearn, right? Like, oh, we offered him this and da 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 da. And a lot of people look dumb and continue to look dumb. I tell you, there's a lot of low quality content in the world of boxing, and there were people who slandered the Normans and said he looked dumb. They jumped the gun, they took a side, and then didn't really look at all the facts. Now, if what Brian Norman is saying is true, that his son got some kind of crazy package from Turkey, to fight Devin Haney, that will have him making more than Boots has been making, which definitely could be true. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure Boots has had some strong paychecks with Eddie Hearn, and then before that he was with the Showtime side of things. But he's fighting, Brian Norman is fighting in Saudi Arabia against Devin Haney. And to be fair, the excitement for that fight and Devin Haney having a brand and it taking place in Saudi Arabia, where you got the teams got to travel and stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if both fighters, Devin and Brian Norman, make some coin, all things considered. So it very well could be an attractive fight that Turkey was willing to bread out the fighters, and they could make more than Boots has been making. That doesn't sound preposterous to me. Now, the other issue is in this Mill City interview with Norman Sr., outside of him saying that his son made the right call, doing things their way, started from the bottom, started from the bottom, now I'm here. Yeah. Started from the bottom, now my whole team in here. Yeah. Right? Aside from that, they're like, Boots could end up fighting on the undercard of us. He's like, and I'm definitely going to bring that up. What if Boots, because keep in mind, they were talking about Boots, Virgil Ortiz fighting in November. Now, things are subject to change, so I don't know if that's still the plan. You got to ask Turkey and Ring that. But if we're being real, if Brian Norman and Devin were to fight, Brian Norman is on a hot streak with a crazy, in my opinion, probably the knockout to beat for boxing. the knockout of the year, right? So he had a viral performance. And then Devin is a good sized brand as well. And it's just an intriguing fight. If they did Virgil Ortiz and Jaron Ennis based on like the star power and the timing, you could very well argue that Brian Norman and Devin would be the main event over Virgil Ortiz and Jaron Boots Ennis if that fight even happens, right? I don't think that's a stretch at all because you have to look at the namesake and the branding of it. So yeah, that would be a trip if Brian Norman and his son kind of get the last laugh and they end up putting Boots on Norman's undercard. And I don't know Turkey, personally. Don't know him at all, never met him. But I've gathered kind of some things about him, if that makes sense, from just making observations and watching. I really feel like, Turkey says he likes boxing and all that, but I also feel like Turkey is influenced by the fans, influenced by the public. Like he'll go on boxing Twitter or X or whatever. He'll go on Instagram, see what people are saying and kind of factor these things in. I really get that feeling with him. So that being said, Brian Norman on a hot streak, everybody was raving about. So he kind of like wants to do business with the people that are hot. He talking about no Tom and Jerry fights, and he want people that kind of have that momentum because this is a business. So if they're bringing an attraction to the beautiful kingdom of Saudi, then they're probably looking to bring fights that are memorable that hopefully people would like instead of a Canelo Skull type of fight, right? So all things considered, Devin Haney and Brian Norman may be a bigger fight and more attractive fight than Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis. Now, don't get me wrong, because that's a subjective statement and some people are going to personally like one fight more than the other. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about from a business perspective, from casual fans and eyes watching, butts in seats. You could very well argue that Devin Brian Norman would be main evented over a fight between these two. Not what you personally like, because some people, if you personally just been wanting to see this fight for years, you'll be like, oh no, you're tripping. It's kind of like Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda, Berlanga versus Hamza Shiraz, where at best it's debatable what should be main event. And I'm interested now. I want to see if Jaron Ennis ends up on that card and what his team, what's next for him, because again, Boots has had some, just ultimately some moves that, unless he can explain it, which I don't know if he can, been a bit weird, right? For example, like Boots, he said, I'm fighting at 147. And then after his fight, he's like, man, I probably got to move up. This weight cut is hard. This is exactly what happened. This weight cut is hard. It's probably time for me to move up. He said this after, I want to say, the Karen Chukadzian fight, because people were like, oh, that wasn't his best performance. And then post-fight, he talked about moving up to 54, right? Then there was an opportunity with Turkey to fight Virgil Ortiz at 154, which you said post-fight Chukadzian fight that you probably were going to need to move up. Then it looked like there was an agreement. Virgil Ortiz, Boots. There were reports that terms had been agreed. Last minute, it fell apart. Turkey said Boots changed his mind. That's Turkey's words, and he's the organizer. He also said they gave us their word, but then they rescinded it for whatever reason. He says the reports came out saying Boots' team was like, can we have the fight at 47? Knowing Virgil Ortiz can't make 140. He almost died trying to make weight in the past. So he can't make 147. So again, that looked kind of weird to the boxing fan. You said you were probably going to move up to 54, a major fight that people have been wanting for years. It looked like it's close to the finish line, but then you decide to stay at 147, and fans got mad at it and said you ducked Virgil Ortiz, whatever. You said you wanted to be undisputed and unify. You unified with Stanionis, so that was good. You had that one unification, and then you look impressive there. Now Boots' team is talking about we can't stay at 47 because the doctor said we're not operating at our fullest potential or capability. So the doctor's advice was we should move up because you're not seeing the real Boots in these fights. Huh? Like, you just look great versus Stanionis, and also your team was making it sound like you wanted to revisit the Brian Norman fight. Brian Norman's team says we already have a Jin Sasaki fight lined up, right? We got this fight lined up. So holla at us after for later in the year to discuss it. Guess what Boots and his team do? The day before Brian Norman Jr. fights Jin Sasaki, early, at least my time in Cali, Pacific Standard Time, early in the morning, the day before, Boots Ennis elects to confirm what Eddie Hearn had said in interviews days before, and he stated, I'm moving up to 54, and he made it official. He's like, time for new things, blah, blah, blah. Mind blown. Why would you play it like this? You see what I'm saying? Just to recap, because I know that's a lot of information, but I want you guys to understand it. Recap. Karen Chukazian, part 2, not the best performance. Post-fight, you kind of made an excuse, said you might need to move up, right? Then you have an opportunity to move up with Virgil Ortiz. It falls apart. You try to bring him to 47. That's not going to happen. Fight falls apart. You say, I'm staying at 47. Then people like myself, I made videos saying, Boots, this weight cut looks like it's intense and it's whooping his butt. Boots, post-fight, after he beat Stanionis by knockout, he was like, man, a lot of these YouTubers, so I took it as like a direct, because I was one of the YouTubers who was saying it, but he was like, a lot of the media people and a lot of the YouTubers, they don't know what they're talking about. They said that I struggled to make weight, right? I struggled to make weight, and I was at weight early this week, and what are they talking about? A lot of y'all don't know what y'all talking about. Y'all just be talking. This is what Boots Ennis said. But then the Brian Norman, you threw out this play like, oh, we want to fight him, knowing he was fighting Jin Sasaki in Japan. Then the day before the fights to happen, you don't know the outcome, of course, but the day before, that's when you elect to decide, hey, let's make it official and clear up the air that we are moving up to 154, right? I'm telling you, the timeline is weird. Not to mention, there are reports that there was an interest in Boots staying at 47 to fight Teofimo Lopez or maybe even Devin Haney, right? Because they both won on that Fatal Fury card. Boots declined at least one of them, if not both of them, because now he's moving up. So it's like, this just looks weird for Boots. I don't care what y'all talking about. It looks weird because, again, the timing is terrible. Timing is terrible. If you knew you wanted to move up, then why were you protesting saying the fans and the YouTubers don't know what they're talking about? You make weight easy and you arrived at the weight easy. And if you arrived at the weight easy, like you are saying, then how come you couldn't entertain a Teofimo fight? The world wanted you to beat up on Teo. He was doing the little racist bag or whatever. That would have been a good fight. So I don't understand how Boots has been moving. And then now it'll be worse if he fights on Brian Norman's undercard. Now it'll be worse if he doesn't fight for the rest of the year. And then Brian Norman got a big fight with Devin Haney, right? These are the decisions that you must make in your career to have a plentiful and fruitful career, in my opinion. And some of these moves like would have been power moves for the boost in his brand, but he elected to go a different direction. Like Teofimo, that seems like a guy coming up from 140. You would be the favorite. You're the dog at 147, you and Brian Norman. But it's a profile builder fight. You know what I mean? If you do something with Teo, like knock him out, then, you know, you still will get respect. So I don't really understand how Boots has been moving and what's the goal here? Like what's the game? Like what's the game plan, if you will? To me, if it sounds a bit weird. Seems like you should have just fought Teo or Devin and then moved up to 54. Now you're moving up to 54. Some of the 54 pounders are with PBC. Charles Conwell just lost. He's a Golden Boy guy. I don't know. I guess the Virgil Ortiz fight is still there, but Virgil Ortiz had a hand injury, so I don't know when he'll be ready. So it feels a bit weird, and you're subtly seeing kind of the momentum shift to Brian Norman. But you had content creators, let them tell it. They were being super biased, where your boy Ego, the best in the business, and it's not even close. I was being objective, not picking a side necessarily, but telling you objectively speaking my truest thoughts. And I just had a hard time suggesting that this was great business and Brian Norman was just ducking Boots. I didn't see that. Again, if a guy has a fight lined up, everybody knew about it, I feel him. I don't want to talk business I don't want to overlook what's in front of me, right? Why would I want to do that? Let me get through this and then we could talk business. But you seen Eddie Hearn and Boots' team, they try to rush the Normans, and then the fans, again, looking for the low-hanging fruit, recency bias, they try to rush the Normans, call them ducks and all types of names, but now kind of worked out for him. Norman Sr. is stating that he believes his son is going to make more than Boots has been making for this Devin Haney fight. So who won? Let the fans tell it a minute ago, and the biased content creators, the usual suspects, the resistance, they were rushing and saying Brian Norman was a duck and Brian Norman is an idiot for not taking $1.7 million or whatever Eddie Hearn was offering for the fight to happen in Philly. But fast forward to the future, Team Norman doesn't look so dumb. They're fighting a guy who's never fought at 147, Devin Haney, that has kind of a bigger profile than Boots or Virgil Ortiz. So you're getting to fight a smaller guy with a bigger profile in an anticipated fight, make more than the 1.7 million, and you don't have to fight in your enemy's backyard. Versus, guess what? The offer from Eddie Hearn and Boots was exactly the opposite. The offer for Jaron Ennis to fight against Brian Norman from Eddie Hearn, he would have had to fight in the backyard of Devin Haney. That's a fact. They were talking about putting that fight where Boots is from. So all how you play the game, for me, I really don't feel the Normans are looking so crazy right about now, like you guys were saying. They kind of played the game smart, and that's how it is. I can think of several examples of this, man. One, Frank Martin, very analogous. When he was supposed to fight Shakur Stevenson, would have been a good fight, right? But he would have had to fight Shakur Stevenson, a good fighter, on enemy territory, ESPN, and he said he didn't like the money. So you got to go on a rival promoter's platform, on a rival promoter's card. So who knows if the rounds are close, the judges just give it to the hometown guy. The judges just give it to you. Probably would have did the fight in Newark or something. So Shakur would have hometown advantage. And you don't like the money. And then boxing fans got all out their seats and they're like, oh man, Frank Martin, he made a mistake, he ducked. He did what was reasonable and the best decision that he felt at the time and says, nah, we're not doing it for that paycheck. And he took the flack from content creators, took the flack from boxing fans. And they're like, you made a huge mistake. You'll never make this type of money. It's over for you. You'll never get any good fights, yada, yada, yada. I'll have you know, Frank Martin's very next fight was against somebody perceived as bigger and more dangerous in Gervonta Davis. And he made more money. And he fought with his people. Like on PBC, he didn't have to go fight on an enemy card and have to deal with politics. So this is a perfect example of when you're making business decisions, you got to do what's right for you. Bump what people are saying. It's like Dave Chappelle. That's another example. Comedy Central was trying to have him do skits on season 3 of Chappelle Show, right? He wasn't feeling the writing. He wasn't feeling it creatively. He wasn't feeling it as an artist. So he turned out, like, at the time, I think it was like $50 million, went to Africa to rediscover himself, was on Oprah. People said he was stupid. How could you turn down that money? That's broke people. The brokies, they gonna say stuff like that because they'll never see $50 million, so they can't conceive how an artist like Chappelle would consider turning down that type of money, right? Because they would probably sell their soul for a fraction of that. So Chappelle did what was right in his heart. I said that to say this. Fast forward to the future, Chappelle got Netflix specials and did deal with Netflix. That Netflix now is way bigger than Comedy Central ever was. The Netflix deal is larger than that 50 million offer for season 3 that he would have got at the time. And Netflix allowed him to creatively have his specials the way he wanted. He was talking about certain sensitive groups and stuff like that, and people were mad. Netflix let him rock. They didn't censor him. So Chappelle won. He won because he didn't feel right doing this. He didn't want to take the money for something his heart wasn't into. And people said he was stupid and judged him. And then it all worked out for him in the end. That's what it's looking like with Brian Norman. People called him all types of ducks and names and said Boots would have knocked you out. You scary, blah, blah, blah. But right now, the way I'm seeing it, Team Norman, they kind of got the upper hand because they haven't announced next move. They haven't announced next fight. Whereas Boots, all he said was, I'm moving up to 54, but the fans want more. We don't know what you're doing next. We don't know who you're fighting next. Everything is speculation, right? Like, maybe he fights Virgil Ortiz. Maybe he does a tune-up. We don't know. So for me, Ring announced that this fight would take place. We don't have all the details, but we know Saudi in November, and both teams have kind of agreed to that, right? That, hey, yeah, we got ourselves a deal. So I would rather have that than to have the unknown, the abyss up in the air and not know what my next move is. But y'all was criticizing the Normans, and I was like, fall back. Y'all need to fall back. I tell y'all, that's why y'all gotta chill. Let me do this. I run boxing. I'm the king of boxing talk. If you side with us, Ego's Army, more often than not, you are going to be on the right side of history, and that is very important to me. People think I just say stuff because I want to say it or whatever. That's not it at all. I'm saying it because I believe in it. So Boots, we'll see what his next move is. I don't know, so I can't judge it and say it's good or bad. However, we do know that Brian Norman, he kind of leveled up. He has recent back-to-back stoppages that were very, very fun to watch. Great for his profile. You could argue like, oh, who's Jin Sasaki and all that, but the casuals, they seen a crazy knockout. That's what it is. Boots, he fought one time this year against a 15-0 Stanionis champion. Before that, he fought 2 times last year, 2024, against a guy Crawford knocked out crazy, David Avocado, and then struggled more in a rematch with Karen Chukazian. And then before that, he was with Showtime and PBC. I'm talking about since he's been with Eddie Hearn. So when we're talking about momentum, Boots just had a birthday. He's 28, right? 28. Brian Norman is younger than that. And he's already getting a mega fight. He is 24. So he's about 4 years younger than Boots. And he's getting a mega fight. And he's off of 3 knockouts in a row. And 2 of them were ranked Jin Sasaki and Giovanni Santillan. And then the other one was Derek Cuevas on Top Rank. And the dude had a 27-1-1 record, right? Which is a great record. So, yeah, I got to say momentum is definitely with Brian Norman at the moment. And again, the Devin Haney fight would be a more anticipated fight than probably any fight that Boots has actually had that has happened already. So let me know what you guys think. Your boy Ego had to get it in and get unpacked. Check out the Mill City interview where Brian Norman said it so you can hear it in its entirety. Use my links for StreamYard, vidIQ, and TubeBuddy in the description to level up. Yo, we unpacked. Live streaming can be tough, which is why I use StreamYard. Click the link in the description for StreamYard, which is an awesome tool that enables you to set up your stream with ease of use. Get great results with live streaming. It's what I use. Stream to social media with ease with StreamYard. Live streaming is here to stay. Engage with your audience using StreamYard. Great way to reach out to your audience and connect. So you need a tool that can do that. If you're new to YouTube and you're struggling to get views, one tool I can provide to you is TubeBuddy. I've been on YouTube over 10 years. I use TubeBuddy daily to crank out videos just like this one that you're watching. Learn how the pros do it with TubeBuddy. YouTube receives a lot of traffic, which also means a lot of creators, a lot of people putting out content. So you need to learn the ropes so you know how to separate yourself, especially if you're new, but even if you're a pro, use TubeBuddy. The link is in the description. Get more views, more subscribers, and a higher click-through rate so ultimately you can realize all of your online goals. Use my affiliate link in the description and grow your channel fast.